Hello, everyone. We are going to give it just a few minutes to allow everyone to trickle in. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Meal Prep 101, Practical Tips for Making Healthy Eating Easier with Dr. Michelle Pearlman. Please note that the webinar is being recorded and you will receive a link to the recording along with a feedback survey in an email following the webinar. My name is Taryn McEachran. I'm the Outreach Coordinator for the Health, Fitness, and Wellness Center, and we'd like to thank you for attending today's webinar. Also, if you submitted a question, we will do our best to cover all of them today, but you will be able to contact Dr. Pearlman after the webinar if you have any additional questions or if your question wasn't answered. As always, if you have any questions during today's presentation, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now, here's a quick introduction of today's speaker. Dr. Michelle Pearlman is an assistant professor in the Division of Digestive and Liver Diseases at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. She is also a physician nutrition specialist and board certified in internal medicine, gastroenterology, and obesity medicine. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pearlman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm excited to be back this month for another, hopefully really interesting seminar and really practical seminar on Meal Prep 101. So today we're going to talk about practical tips for making healthy eating easier. And yes, it is doable. Okay, so I'm going to skip over that. I have no disclosures. So today we're going to talk a little about what is the difference between eating out versus eating in. We're going to go over common modes of food preparation. Believe it or not, there's a huge difference between steamed and stir-fried and grilled and baked. All of that actually makes a big difference in the amount of calories and salt and sugar that you end up consuming. And then we'll go over kind of some practical tips on really how to take a lot of these things home and really teach you how you can meal prep on your own without being a culinary expert. So I'm going to pose a question to you all to kind of just start things off. Are meal replacements or liquids healthy? Are they good tools for weight loss and for overall health? I'm going to pose that question to you all because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So when people think about liquids and they go to a restaurant or whatnot and they get a soup, they often think that, oh, it's a soup, it's liquid calories, it's less heavy, it must be healthy, or it must be good for weight loss. But when we actually compare liquids versus solids, there's a big difference here when it comes to your satiety signals or what makes you feel full. Liquids in general empty faster than solids. So if you tend to get hungry or if you tend to like to eat a large amount of food in order to feel satiated, but you end up switching to a liquid meal replacement or a soup, that actually is going to make you feel hungrier soon after. And a lot of these soups, if it's, let's say, clam chowder or like a broccoli cheese soup, they are often very calorie dense because there's a lot of cheese in there and a lot of other ingredients. So you could end up actually drinking a soup or eating a soup that has 500 calories or more. But because it's liquid, again, it's going to empty faster than if you ate the 500 calories. And then, so you're often hungrier sooner after that meal. So it's actually much easier to overconsume calories and in particular salt. Soups have a ton of sodium in them. So it's much easier to overconsume calories and salt when you end up drinking your calories as opposed to eating your calories. So in general, when people are trying to lose weight, I will often tell them, I prefer you eating your calories and not drinking it. But if you're on the run, you don't have time to sit down to eat a meal, then there are better options on how to consume those liquids that are going to give you protein and good nutrients and really minimize the excessive salt and sugar. So there's ways to do it in a healthier and a more strategic manner, but just keep in mind that liquids for the most part empty faster than solids, and so people end up actually being more hungry. If you are going to create a liquid and want to keep full longer, then something that you can do is actually add a little bit of fat to it. So when you compare all the macronutrients, whether it's protein, fat, or carbohydrates, fat has the biggest influence on the rate at which your stomach empties. So if you, let's say, you're making a soup, then you may want to put something with a little bit of fat in there, whether you maybe put in some chunks of avocado or something. That can definitely slow down the stomach emptying. I'll go over my little smoothie protocol, but that's something that you can do in a smoothie is add like some peanut butter or almond butter, maybe some chia seeds or some diced frozen avocado. That little bit of fat will actually keep you full longer. So I don't tell people to have smoothies, again, because if you add a million ingredients to it, the calories can definitely add up. But here are some of my kind of general smoothie tip guidelines if you're going to create a smoothie. So remember, just because a food or a beverage has a lot of nutrients, it does not mean that it is low calorie, and it does not mean that it's low in carbs or sugar. Be very careful with these health claims. If you go to a smoothie bar or a juice bar, they're going to give you all these health claims to help try to convince you to buy that product, to spend $10 on a drink. So what do they often tell you? They'll say, it's high in nutrients, high fiber, organic, dairy-free, and then they'll say often no added sugar. Remember, though, that no added sugar does not mean no sugar. It just means they're not adding high fructose corn syrup or sugar packets to it. But if they're adding a lot of fruits and vegetables, then some of these smoothies can have upwards of 80 grams of sugar per smoothie because they're adding pineapple and mango and strawberries and yogurt. All those are natural sugar, but sugar nonetheless. So again, liquids empty faster than solids. So if you add a little bit of fat to it, that will slow down the gastric emptying and keep you full longer. Be very careful with purchasing these pre-made options like the naked juices and things like that, because again, they have a lot of sugar in them, even if they are natural sugars. And then remember, no added sugar does not mean no sugar. Things like fruit, honey, milk, etc. all have sources of natural sugar. If you're going to add some source of a protein to it, like a protein powder, I do recommend that you buy kind of the small packets that they often sell, so you can play around with different brands and different flavors because everyone has different taste preferences. So this kind of goes over my Pearlman smoothie protocol, and it's on my website if you want to take a closer look at it. So the first step you're going to take is you're going to choose your primary protein source. It is important to have at least a little bit of protein with every meal and snack. So options to get your protein would be, buying like a protein powder, and you can choose whether or not you want a dairy protein like whey or casein. If you have a dairy allergy, then you may want to try one of the plant-based protein options. So options would include things like hemp protein or pea protein. Just be careful that when you're looking for a protein powder, try to keep it with as minimal ingredients as possible. A lot of them, like the Vega or Orgain, they promote adding like 50 ingredients to it. People often think that more is better, when in fact more is not always better. And when you have 50 ingredients that you pulverize together, sometimes people can actually have a lot of GI intolerances because our body's not used to processing so many ingredients at once. And although fiber is very important for gut health, sometimes too much of a good thing can actually be a bad thing. So I really recommend choosing protein powders that have 7 ingredients or less if possible, and really trying to find ones that don't have artificial sweeteners like aspartame or sucralose. There are a bunch out there that have the plant-based sweeteners like monk fruit, so those are probably better. Or if you choose just an unflavored protein powder, often those are the cleanest versions because it's literally just the pea or the hemp protein or the whey isolate, and they don't have a lot of these other sweeteners in them. So your next step is going to be to choose your liquid base. So options would include water or non-dairy milk, things like unsweetened oat milk, almond milk, cashew, soy, all of those are great options. In general, I don't tell people to drink cow's milk. Most people are actually lactose intolerant. It's actually normal to lose the enzyme as we get older. But also excessive dairy in general is pro-inflammatory. It contains growth factors that promote weight gain, and can also cause a lot of GI symptoms, like I mentioned. But what people often forget is that cow's milk has, on average, 12 grams of sugar. Even the lactate milk still has lactose in it. They just add the enzyme to break it down. So if you want to minimize your sugar, if you're trying to lose weight or just feel better in general and eat more low or anti-inflammatory foods, then cutting out the cow's milk is a really good option, because you also cut out those 12 grams of sugar. Other ingredients that you can add, it's really going to vary based on the person's preferences, if they have any GI intolerances or food allergies, but ways to get in a lot of extra nutrients, but doesn't add a ton of sugar or extra calories would be greens, things like frozen spinach or frozen kale. Other things that you can add would be like frozen cauliflower or butternut squash, pureed pumpkin, a little bit of frozen fruit, preferably your lower sugar options like frozen berries. Those are all good options. In general, if you're making a fruit smoothie, I recommend that you stick to 1 cup total of fruit per smoothie. That will ensure that you're not adding 80 grams of sugar in that smoothie. So if, let's say, you want, let's say, pineapple, bananas, and frozen berries, then you can have all 3, that's totally fine, but put them in a measuring cup and make sure you don't go over that 1 cup measurement for the fruit. And that's really to reduce the extra sugar. Other ways that you can add in a little bit of fat in there to help keep you full longer would be adding things like unsweetened almond or peanut butter or cashew butter, hemp hearts, which are a really good plant-based seed that has good protein in there and a little bit of fat, chia seeds, flax seeds. A lot of grocery stores sell the frozen diced Hass avocados. If you do have dairy, then things like adding, plain Greek yogurt in there, all those things can be very helpful. I'm not a fan of juicing in general because, again, that fiber and a little bit of fat will help keep you full longer. And it takes, if you were to, let's say, have a glass of orange juice, it would really require you to juice about 4 to 5 oranges. No one really would eat 4 to 5 oranges, because if you were to eat that much, all that fiber would make you feel really full. You just wouldn't be hungry enough to eat 4 to 5 oranges. But unfortunately, we think that it's normal, or we actually promote drinking the sugar that is in 4 to 5 oranges, but we're not getting much of that fiber, and it's a ton of sugar. So even though, again, it may be all natural sugar, it is a lot of sugar nonetheless. So in general, I don't promote juicing, but if you're going to do it, again, you want to minimize the extra fruit. So maybe you just use one small apple and the rest is going to come from some vegetables. So really choosing mostly low carb or low sugar vegetables, your greens, cucumber, wheatgrass, things like that. Adding herbs like ginger and turmeric to help flavor it. And then even adding back some of that pulp to increase the fiber in there. And that will again help you feel full longer and is important for gut health. So what is the difference between smoothies and juices? In general, with smoothies, you're blending or you're chopping the ingredients. It actually introduces quite a bit of air because of that blending motion. So if you tend to suffer from a lot of bloating or belching or abdominal distension, then it may actually not be from the ingredients in the smoothie, but the mere fact that you introduced a lot of air into that smoothie. So those would be things to kind of keep in mind. You maintain the fiber in there, which again is important for gut health and normal bowel movements and the microbiome. And it does require digestion because you still have kind of those intact molecules in there. Juicing in general, you're extracting the fiber, the majority of the fiber from the juice. You have more rapid emptying because there's no fat in there, and you're getting rid of the fiber, and so it's emptying faster from your stomach. So in people who they need their nutrients, but maybe they have a condition like gastroparesis where their stomach empties very slow, then they will likely tolerate maybe a little bit of juice much better than they would a smoothie because there's actually less fiber. So a lot of my recommendations when it comes to juicing or smoothies and what ingredients to add to it is really going to depend on whether or not someone suffers from certain GI symptoms or intestinal motility problems. So some of my take-home points: juicing or smoothies can help people consume more nutrients if you don't like to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, but just be very wary that they often contain high amounts of sugar if you don't limit the fruit, and really try to make your own in order to limit the excessive calories and extra sugar. So now we're going to talk about my pearls of wisdom, tips and tricks when dining out. You know, most of us live in Miami. People want to go out to eat. We don't want to be hermits. And so often if people are trying to lose weight, they're told you can't eat out, you need to make all your own meals. But that's just not realistic for most people. So I really try to get people to develop a strategy, get comfortable for asking things within reason off the menu, because most restaurants are really just going to offer what's called the revenue menu. They obviously want to make money, and not many people are going to order the steamed vegetables, so it's not going to be on the menu. But I'm going to kind of take you through how you kind of navigate the menu and how you can ask for little things that will actually drastically reduce the amount of calories when you're eating out. So these are some of my dining out hacks. So something that I always do before I go out to eat is I review the menu beforehand. So I go through it, I try to figure out, you know, what are the protein options, what are the salad options, the vegetables, depending on the type of restaurant you're going to. If it's a higher, you know, more upscale restaurant, you're more likely to be able to order things that are not on the menu because they can often tailor things for you. One thing that I mentioned during the talk 2 weeks ago is that how you eat is just as important as what you eat. And unfortunately, in today's society, we're literally just shoveling tons of food down our throat. And we don't give our brain enough time to actually get those satiety hormones from our intestine to tell us that we're full. So if you take 5 or 10 minutes to eat your meal, you will tend to overeat because you don't even feel those satiety hormones yet. You haven't given your brain enough time. So the more that you can eat slowly, chew your food until you can't feel the texture of the food in your mouth anymore. On average, it should take you about 20 to 30 minutes per meal. That will really allow your brain to understand what satiety feels like so that you're less likely to overeat. Always ask for dressings and sauces on the side. Otherwise, it's literally your salad is swimming in the Caesar dressing. Really try to avoid beverages that contain calories and sugar. So it really, you know, it's interesting in that it depends on where you live on what sort of drinks are available. For instance, when I lived in North Carolina, if you ordered iced tea, it was sweetened unless otherwise specified. Here in Miami, it's usually unsweetened unless you otherwise specify you want it sweetened. So a lot of it depends on where you live and what sort of kind of the social and cultural norms are. But always get it unsweetened. And then if you want to add something to it, at least you are in full control over it. And then really try to aim towards ordering a balanced meal. So you don't want to get a 9-inch plate and literally have a 16 or 24 ounce steak on it. So in general, at least half the plate should be your vegetables, a fourth of it would be your starchy item if you want it, and then a fourth would be your protein. So not all soups and salads are created equal. So these are 2 options that you can actually get at Panera. This is the chicken Caesar salad and the broccoli cheese soup. So very common and popular options. And so when you actually look at the nutrient breakdown here, so this has 800 calories. And so for most people who are trying to lose weight, they may be, for most females, it's around 1,200 calories per day. Most men around 1,500 to 1,800 calories per day if someone's trying to lose weight. So just with this quote unquote healthy broccoli cheese soup and chicken Caesar salad, for women, they're already consuming 2/3 of their daily intake. And this is just one of their meals. 50 grams of fat, which is a significant amount of fat, 2 grams of sodium. So so really we recommend, the American Heart Association recommends less than 2.3 grams of sodium per day. Yet in this meal, you're actually almost at your total daily for the whole day, just in this meal. 47 grams of carbs and 48 grams of protein. And what's equally disturbing, and maybe even more disturbing, is how many ingredients are listed on here. So for the salad, I can't even count them, but I would imagine there's over 50. And then for the broccoli cheese soup, probably just as much. And so as a gastroenterologist, if someone comes to my clinic and they say, doc, I'm having a lot of bloating and urgency, I have to run to the bathroom after I eat, what is the problem, or what's wrong with my bowels? And they say, oh, I just had, just a simple salad and a soup from the restaurant. That could be an ingredient or a food sensitivity of one of 100 different things. And so it's not just a salad with chicken, and it's not just a soup, it's 100 ingredients. And sometimes just too much of something can cause people issues. So it may have nothing to do with the soup. It may have everything to do with the fact that someone consumed 50 grams of fat in one meal, and fat can stimulate the bowels and cause people to run to the bathroom. Or fat is going to slow down the stomach. And so people may have regurgitation or bloating or nausea. It may have nothing to do with what they actually ate, but the mere fact that they just consumed 50 grams of fat in a single meal. So if you were to go to the same restaurant and still get a simple salad and a soup, but have more of a strategy going into it, and let's say you just got the seasonal green salad and the 10 vegetable soup, you just went from 800 calories to a total of 290 calories, 50 grams of fat to 13 grams of fat. You almost have the amount of sodium. You reduce the carbs. Although the protein is much less, there's ways that you could increase the protein. Maybe you would get the seasonal salad and say, hey, can I get grilled chicken or something thrown on top? Or maybe some cubed tofu or some edamame, little soybeans on top of the salad. So there are ways to increase that protein by ordering a side of some sort. But as you can see, everything else is dramatically improved. And the ingredients is a whole lot less. So although there are still a lot of ingredients here, it's still not ideal. And my guess is if you were to make these items at home, you wouldn't be adding 50 ingredients to the soup, but at least it is less, which is always a good thing. So when people tell me, I enjoy pizza or I enjoy soup or a hamburger, I will often tell them, okay, that's fine to have that obviously once in a while, but if you make it at home, it's still much better than if you were to get a cheeseburger at a restaurant, because my guess is no one's going to add the 50 ingredients that they've added for you. So let's talk about modes of food preparation. So food prep 101 here. So it really does matter how the food is prepared. So you have raw, which is going to be no added calories. It's in the most natural state of the food. Now, in people who suffer from a lot of bloating, sometimes having a bunch of raw cauliflower or broccoli because it's not broken down can cause more bloating. So again, a lot of these recommendations are going to be based on someone's underlying GI issues if they have them. But in general, your raw or your steamed are going to be your lowest calorie options. So for instance, I went to a restaurant in the Gables last week. They had grilled vegetables, but the grilled, I had a feeling would still be very heavy in some sort of seasoning and sauce or a lot of oil. So I asked them to steam it, and they did. It wasn't a problem. And so if you end up actually getting rid of those extra sauces and oils and seasonings, you will reduce the amount of sodium, which plays a huge role in high blood pressure and water retention. And you can often save a couple hundred calories just in that one step. So you're still able to eat the food they would have given you, but again, you're reducing a lot of the extra stuff in the sauces and seasonings. So raw or steamed will be your best bet. You can get it baked or roasted. That's using indirect or dry heat. Grilling or barbecue uses direct heat. Barbecue is more of that low and slow. Now, there is some data to show that if we're cooking our meats too much, that can actually be linked to certain cancers. So in general, I really promote the raw or the steamed or baked, but anything with that char can actually, some data suggests, cause damage to the bowel and increase risk of certain cancers. Stir fry, or you're stir frying something in a skillet or a pan that has a lot of added oils and other seasonings and marinades, so that can add a lot of calories. Air fryer is a great option as long as you're obviously not pouring the oil on top. So that's kind of the newer kid on the block, is a great way to get that crispy texture, but really eliminating a lot of that extra oil and calories and fat that you would if you were to actually deep fry something. Saute is kind of the act of jumping or tossing food in a skillet. Again, that often has a lot of oil and butter, so that will add a lot of calories. And then you can have, braised or stews where it's cooked in a liquid like tomatoes or wine. So often if something is braised or in a stew, if people suffer from heartburn and it's a tomato-based product, that can definitely cause issues. So in general, your lower calorie options, so one, to reduce the calories, and two, to reduce a lot of the seasonings and particularly sodium, your best bets would be raw, steamed, or air fried. I wanted to bring this little thing up here when we talk about these cooking sprays. So a lot of people, I used to do my little Pam dance where I would take the spray and I would spray. And when you look at the actual nutrition label, everything on the label says 0,000, but it's olive oil, it's a pure fat. So how do these manufacturers get away with that? What they do is they make the serving size so incredibly small. So in this can of olive oil, it's almost 500 servings. And the serving size is 1/4 of a second. I don't even know what 1/4 of a second is. So just remember that if you're even with these spray oils, although it's much easier to control the amount of oil when you use a spray versus when you pour it on, they still have calories because it is a fat. So nothing is free in life, not even free water. So just keep that in mind, that these sprays, the calories do add up. So the importance of meal prep. If you invest the time now, you will end up saving time and money later. And I really speak about that even just when it comes to healthier eating. You either invest in your health now or you invest in your sickness later. So as long as you have a plan, in reality, meal prepping should not actually take more time. It will actually save you time because you're not online trying to figure out what to order from Uber Eats. You're not waiting in line at the cafeteria at work. So if you actually bring your own food and make it in bulk, believe it or not, it will actually save you more time. So a lot of times when people tell me they don't have enough time, I often look back at them and say that it sounds like we need to reassess our priorities. At the end of the day, we all have 24 hours in the day, and it really comes down to what people think is a priority. And I truly believe that we should be using food as medicine, and that medications and fancy surgeries and procedures, none of that will help you feel good if you don't truly eat for your body and really view food as medicine. So when you meal prep at home, you also have much more control over the ingredients you're adding, portion sizes that will help you reduce a lot of GI symptoms or intolerances, and much less temptation to eat poorly. So a lot of the pictures that I'm going to now show you are either my own food prep or some of my patients and family and friends have sent me a lot of their pictures as well. So the picture on the left is actually pre-portioned frozen wild caught fish. There's a lot of places out there where they do this for you. You can either go to Publix or Winn-Dixie. This fish was actually from a place called Wild Fork in the Gables, but they have a bunch of locations. So they're typically pre-portioned in about 4-ounce little blocks in like a plastic vacuum sealed container, and they're just in the freezer. And so what I'll do is I'll just take out one packet, put it in the fridge so it's defrosting during the day, and then that will be, let's say, the salmon that I end up putting in the air fryer for dinner. The pictures on the right are my own refrigerator with some meal prep options here. So I use just little Tupperware containers. They're small containers. The ones on the top, it's kind of put out in days. So there's yogurt there. There's a little carton of egg whites. There's shredded chicken, and I think berries in another container. And then below that are a bunch of Tupperware containers, again, with salads, with a protein added on top of it. So I'll show you more detailed pictures of that. But if you stock your fridge with this, put it, set it out in days or whatnot, you don't even have to think about it. Again, you spend a little bit of time with the organization up front, but at the end of the day, it makes the rest of the week go much smoother. Okay, so my goal for people is not to tell them necessarily what to eat. It's really just to give you all the tools to help you get creative, play around with the tools in the toolbox, and kind of figure out what's going to work for you and whoever else lives in your bubble. So some basic principles in general. My Pearlman secret sauce here is to focus on whole foods. I'm a big proponent of whole food plant-based. That does not mean vegan or vegetarian. It just means most of the calories that we consume should be from whole foods, fruits, vegetables, nuts, grains, legumes, things like that. And then if you want, obviously, a little bit of dairy or animal protein is fine as well. So in general, the meal should be vegetables, lean protein. You can either get your protein from animal or plant-based sources. Just remember that one chicken breast does not necessarily mean one serving. A serving of chicken or most protein is around 3 to 4 ounces. Many times a chicken breast could be 6, 10, or 12 ounces. So always remember that the size of the protein, even if it just comes in a little package, does not actually equate to one serving many times. If you're hungry, then having snacks planned can be very helpful, but by no means does that mean that everyone needs to have 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. Everyone is different. And I think, if you know that you tend to get hungry at 3 in the afternoon and there's a vending machine right by your office and you're always tempted to walk by the vending machine, then you can still eat. It is totally fine to have a snack at 3 p.m. when you're hungry, but don't sabotage yourself and walk by the vending machine, because nothing ever good comes out of a vending machine besides maybe a bottle of water. So really bring your snacks to work or have them in the refrigerator at eye level so that when you open the refrigerator door, you have your little hummus pack and carrots there, and you're not rummaging around the pantry. So always set yourself up for success. The other thing, just like the chicken breast, in that one apple does not necessarily mean one serving. A lot of our fruits look like they're on steroids. And so if you get, let's say, a Honeycrisp apple that's this big, that may actually be 12 ounces or 3 servings. So when you're going to the produce department and you're getting a fruit, I know it's tempting to get the biggest apple, and I'm guilty of doing that myself. They just look so much better. But in general, try to find the smallest apple or the orange or pear that they have, and that's much closer to an actual serving. You want to minimize, again, the added sauces, marinades, high-fat fillers. They are often really high in saturated fat and sugar. And using things, it doesn't mean you have to eat very bland food. There are other ways to flavor your food that make it palatable and to the point where you actually enjoy it. That's actually possible. So using things like fresh avocado, or you can make yourself some guac or pre-made guac, fresh herbs and hummus. If you don't have heartburn, then squeezing maybe a little bit of lemon on top. All these things are really good options to help flavor your food. In general, though, it's important to realize that our food is so incredibly palatable. It's so darn tasty, and we like that, obviously. But there's a fine line between enjoying your food and really enjoying your food. And so when the food tastes so darn good, it stimulates reward centers in our brain that stimulate dopamine and norepinephrine, and it's literally a drug. Sugar is a drug, and salt is a drug. And so if it tastes so good and you overeat to the point where you're not hungry, but you just want to clean the plate, because it just tastes that good. So really, I want you to enjoy your food, but not over enjoy your food. Okay, so let's talk about breakfast options. In general, unless you have significant heartburn, there's really not a whole lot that's wrong with coffee. The problem is what people add to their coffee. In general, there's a big difference between having 1 cup of coffee and 1 pot of coffee. So obviously excessive caffeine can definitely cause an issue with increase in heart rate, with palpitations and blood pressure. Sometimes can affect on the bowel, whether it's constipation or diarrhea. But it's really what we're adding to the coffee that adds a lot of calories. So you want to avoid the creamers, you want to avoid the cow's milk, like I mentioned. If you want it to be a little bit less bitter, then adding some of these unsweetened non-dairy milks that have less sugar and calories can be helpful. And really try to avoid the sweeteners. I even recommend trying to avoid the plant-based sweeteners. The sweeteners in general, whether it's plant-based or artificial sweeteners, are anywhere from 300 to 600 times sweeter than regular sugar. And so what happens is that we're taking in these sweeteners and it tells our brain what we think normal sugar or sweetness factor should be. And so when you end up eating berries or an apple or a Greek yogurt, for many people that doesn't taste sweet because we're used to something 300 to 600 times sweeter than that. So what do a lot of people do? We end up adding honey or agave to it to actually improve or increase the sweetness. So if you can actually take out these sweeteners, you will actually retrain your brain and your taste buds on what true natural sugar tastes like. So some non-dairy milk options, again, it's going to depend on food allergies, dietary preferences, whether or not you want a higher carb option or a lower carbohydrate option. There are unsweetened or sweetened varieties, flavored or unflavored. So in general, your nut milks, so your almond, your cashew, your hazelnut milk, those are going to be your lower in sugar, lower in carbs, but always get the unsweetened, never the sweetened. I also recommend getting the unflavored and not the flavored, because the flavored ones, whether it's vanilla or chocolate, often have added sugar or these artificial or plant-based sweeteners. If you want something that's maybe has a little bit more of a creamier texture, then doing like a hemp milk or oat milk, rice or soy milk, those tend to have a little bit more calories and carbohydrates, but are all good options. Again, as long as you do the unsweetened and preferably the unflavored, all of these are good options. Okay, so what are some options for breakfast? So whether you're on the go or you have, you're working remotely and you have more time to make breakfast, these are some of my go-tos. So you could do your own little plain, your own yogurt parfait. If you get a pre-made yogurt parfait at a juice bar, at a restaurant, or at the grocery store, they're often using very high sugar containing yogurt. They're adding granola and honey and a bunch of fruit. So they are very high in sugar. So I always recommend that people make their own yogurt parfaits. So I recommend choosing a plain Greek yogurt. You can add some nuts on top. You can add some fresh fruit. You can actually make your own granola. Granola in general, if it's store-bought, is basically oats covered in sugar. So you can actually make your own by putting just like plain oatmeal on a cooking sheet, adding cinnamon, adding some chopped nuts, and just baking it. And that's a great way to make your own. And then you can kind of top that onto your yogurt. So other things to add for that sweetness would be adding fruit to your yogurt or fruit to your oatmeal. If you're going to do oatmeal, you want to do just the plain and then adding again the fresh fruit or nuts to it. Really try to avoid the oatmeal that has any sort of dried fruit in there that adds a ton of sugar. If you want to make an egg omelet or an egg scramble, those are all good options. If you're running short on time, then literally just getting a packet of hard-boiled eggs are super easy to take on the go. You don't want to have too many yolks in a day. I tend to tell people to have 1 whole egg or less per day, and the rest would be coming from egg whites. So these are really good options that are either good snacks or a good meal. And if you want to make an omelet, then you can add spinach or other vegetables to it, like mushrooms or onions. For flavor, you can add, let's say, avocado or salsa. Those are all really good options. Another good option would be something like an avocado toast. So if you just have bread or an English muffin or a pita, you're getting mainly carbohydrates and a little bit of fiber. But again, if you want to stay full longer, then adding something with a little bit of fat to it will help again with those satiety signals. So I don't recommend adding butter, but if you want to add something with poly and monounsaturated fats, you could add some almond butter to it, or maybe some guac or hummus or avocado. That again will help keep you full longer. And then you can actually, if you want to get creative and experiment in the kitchen with a waffle maker or make pancakes, then you can actually get rid of just regular flour and use things like coconut flour, almond flour, hazelnut flour. You can use that actually with some egg whites or egg beaters, some baking powder, cinnamon, fresh fruit, and nuts. And you can actually make your own kind of grain-free pancakes or waffles. So here are just some pictures of things that I've made at home. Here's my little homemade yogurt parfait. It literally takes 2 seconds. You use the little cup of the Greek yogurt as your bowl. You add some fresh berries to it, some nuts and cinnamon, and voila, there you go. It's a breakfast on the go. The picture on the left is my homemade coconut flour waffles with Greek yogurt, nuts, and berries on the side. And then you can use that same kind of waffle recipe or pancake recipe and make a loaf. So all really good options if you're craving something that's kind of heartier or kind of like a starchy option, but by substituting out your wheat flour or all-purpose flour with the coconut or almond flour. Sometimes I'll even add just like a protein powder to it. Those are all really good options on how to get, again, good nutrients, but reduce those added carbohydrates. So here are what it would look like if I were meal prepping some breakfast options. So you can actually do, you can make these little egg McMuffins in advance. So the picture on the left lower corner is actually just egg white, cinnamon, fresh berries. And I just put it in little cupcake tins, put it in the oven for like 10 minutes or so. And then I freeze them and I'll put, 2 of those in a little baggie and, take that on the way to work. So those are really easy ways that you can make these little egg McMuffins, and you can play around with what you're adding to them if you want to kind of mix it up. So on the right is just spinach and just plain egg beater egg McMuffin, but you could add, actually like cooked spinach or mushrooms or onions, whatever vegetables you want in the little cupcake tin. You can play around with different options and see what you like. I will also put just plain oatmeal with nuts and blueberries, and I'll just add water or my non-dairy milk. Those are the options in the upper left with the oatmeal. And so these are all good options. And then the one in the middle is actually, I was making a pancake with fresh apples, and that's a protein powder and the egg beaters. So all good options that are actually fairly quick to do, and you can do it in advance. So what are some of my go-to healthy snacks? So you can have fruit. That doesn't mean you can have a huge bowl of fruit, but choose one fruit and try to stick again with one serving. So it'd be like a small apple or something. You could do your yogurt with the nuts and the fruit. So one of my go-tos is actually one of these little snack packs of nuts. It's 100 calories, and it's honestly like 10 nuts. It's honestly just really sad how few you get for 100 calories, but it's mostly fat, so it's calorie dense. But these are very easy to take on the go, and so it's a very easy snack, non-perishable. These are really great things that you can take while you travel. A really good snack option is edamame. Here, these are little soybeans. So I get them in the frozen aisle, and then I'll literally just defrost them during the day, or I'll pop them in the microwave. I don't add salt to it. Some people do. Again, we really want to minimize the salt, but those are great snacks that you can just put in a little Tupperware container or a bag. Great source of fiber, great source of protein. So a plant-based protein option that will help keep protein shake. Again, I'm not a fan of liquids, but if you make your own protein shake, then that's fine if you're on the go. Little things like celery. So I carry these around everywhere. My little pre-cut celery sticks. You can cut your own, but these are just easier. So I'll do celery, and then I'll buy these little single serving hummus or guacamole packs. It's 150 calories for one of these. So something that I'll often take to work if I have time in between patients or a quick lunch break. I'll have my celery sticks with my hummus. So it's about, for all of this, it's 200 calories. Again, good source of fiber to keep me full, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fiber. So it's all in all a great, great snack option. Now, oftentimes the hummus will come with, a little thing of pretzels or chips. I dump these and I literally just get the hummus, but a lot of stores now have 6 or 8 pack of just the hummus or the guacamole, so you don't have to be tempted with the salty chips on the side. So other snack options, you have little sweet mini bell peppers. If you go to places like Fresh Market or some of these higher end grocery stores, they will have little snack packs. They tend to be on the more expensive side. Some of these will cost upwards of $6 to $10 per snack pack. I'm a big fan of the broccoli and the bell peppers and the sugar snap peas. Those are good. Be very careful though with the one on the left, which has the walnuts, the 2 hard-boiled eggs, strawberries, and blueberries. If you actually look at the amount of calories in that, it's I think close to 600 calories. So that's actually more than you should be having in a meal. So just be careful, okay, that if you get a snack pack, just realize it doesn't mean that it is low in calories. So it's still very high in calories, but it's a good option that maybe if you tend to get hungry during the day, that maybe you split that into 2 or 3 snacks throughout the day. So kind of more options if you're going now, the holiday time is coming up. So I always suggest that if you're going to a party or a get together, that if you want more control over healthier options, then just bring a big platter of just fresh veggies and hummus. That way you know that there's going to be something there that you're comfortable eating. So that can be very helpful. So guacamole and hummus are still calorie dense because there's a decent amount of fat in there. So either you get the little snack packs, or if you want to make your own, then just make sure that you're portioning it appropriately. Even if you get the small Hass avocado, they're often 250 calories per avocado. So closer to a serving size would be half of that. You can also actually make your own popsicles, and I have more information about that on my website, where let's say you went through my Pearlman smoothie protocol, you can actually get popsicle molds, like silicone popsicle molds off of Amazon, put that smoothie in the popsicle mold, and you can actually create your own fruit / vegetable / Greek yogurt popsicle. They're much better, much lower in calories, less artificial ingredients than a lot of the bars that you were to get at the supermarket that are promoted as healthy bars, like those Yasso Greek bars, which have a ton of sugar. Okay, so let's go over meal options in general. This is going to vary from person to person on what their budget food preferences are, whether they're eating at work or at home, and if they have any GI issues like acid reflux. So in general, you should be eating your smaller meal at night. People will have less GI symptoms. You don't want to load your stomach with 800 calories worth of food at 8 p.m. and then lie in bed and watch TV at 9 p.m. Whatever is sitting in your stomach is likely to reflux up into your throat because of that mechanical process as you lie down. If you're going to have a starch like rice, pasta, bread, beans, potato, then you want to try to have that when you're more hungry. So I wouldn't waste a bunch of bread or pasta for lunch if you tend to have more hunger for dinner. So typically have that high carb starchier item when you tend to have more hunger. So here's some options on a grilled chicken salad. So there's grilled chicken strips on there with some air fried cauliflower on top of a bunch of lettuce. You can, let's say, roast asparagus and celery. You can put fresh veggies on a salad. I'm a big proponent of making your own dressing. So in that dressing, it's in this little kind of salad dressing spinner thing. So there's vinegar in there, olive oil, and a bunch of herbs. So making your own stuff can be very helpful. So some appetizer options. So again, the holidays are coming up. These are things that you could actually make yourself or bring to an event. The picture on the left is just a big platter of homemade guacamole. There are little cups of nuts. So instead of having a huge bowl of mixed nuts and getting handful after handful and not realizing you may have just consumed 1,000 calories worth of nuts, you can put them in little shot glasses, and there's 10 or 14 nuts in there, and that's a great way to portion control. You've got cherry tomatoes and cubes of tofu. So these are all kind of really good options where it's much easier to portion control when they're on little toothpicks and in little shot glass containers. Other things that if instead of chips, you can actually make these little roasted cauliflower chips. not really chips, but if you use your imagination, you can cut the cauliflower like the florets, put them in the air fryer, make them kind of crispy, put whatever seasoning you want on them, and actually use that as your quote unquote chip with your guacamole or hummus, things like that. And then just serving, again, that steamed edamame is a great appetizer option. So portion control, portion control, portion control. Portions matter. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So, having 5 fruits, although it's natural sugar, lots of good nutrients and fiber, is still 5 fruits worth of sugar. Okay, so portions do matter. This is just going back a little bit with the different modes of meal preparation. You can just cut up a bunch of vegetables in advance. You can either put it in an air fryer with whatever herbs you want to put on top, roast it or grill it. Changing around the mode of food preparation can actually add variety to the flavor and keep you less bored as you meal prep. So this is an example of really how to meal prep in bulk, where there's a bunch of chicken tenderloins and vegetables on the grill, and then there's sliced potatoes there. But remember, you can't just have half of that tray. That's way too much. So whenever you have that plate, again, half of it should be your vegetables, a fourth or less should be your starchy item, and then a fourth of that should be your protein. So these are additional options here on ways to get lots of vegetables. Someone I think had posed a question on how do you, eat to where you're not starving? And a big part of that is not only adding in a little bit of fat, but having a lot of fiber there. So you can end up filling your plate with a ton of lower calorie, high fiber options that will help keep you full longer, but you're not getting a ton of calories with that. So playing around again with the mode of food preparation, whether it's grilling, saute, stir fry, bake, raw, steamed, whatever. Those are really great ways to get your fiber, your nutrients, and to keep you full longer, but not add excessive calories. This is a really easy option where if you have, let's say, asparagus and sweet potatoes and diced chicken, they actually, a lot of grocery stores sell these steam fresh bags. So you actually can put whatever you want in the little bag, pop in the microwave, depending on if it's raw or frozen, it will tell you how long to cook it. So you cook it first, then I put it actually in the air fryer to make it crispy. And it really took 15 minutes to make this. So it's very easy as long as you kind of know what you're doing. This is how you can use an Instant Pot. So I literally just took a bunch of chicken breasts, I put it in an Instant Pot with a little bit of bone broth and a bunch of water. I cooked it down, I shredded it, and then I put everything in Tupperware containers. And then you can put some in the fridge, leave the rest in the freezer. That's a great way to kind of have your protein options in advance. And then again, the hard-boiled egg options, you can either make them yourself or buy them pre-made. Really good options to have on hand for either snacks or things to top on salads or other vegetables. Roasting or baking, you can do with anything, whether it's vegetables, adding your own seasoning. Again, using if you want a little bit of oil, but remember, you can't just pour it on top and believe that those calories don't matter. But roasting or baking can be a really easy way to cook in bulk and then freeze the leftovers. Again, just more examples of how to bake things like mushrooms, how to grill, how to prepare salads in advance. All very easy because you just set out a bunch of Tupperware containers and you can vary what you put in each one. But as long as you kind of organize yourself, it's very easy to make 10, 15, 20 meals in on a Sunday. This is an example of something that I made in the air fryer. So it was literally just sugar snap peas, cauliflower, sweet potato fries, and wild caught salmon, and then some fresh avocado on the side. So ways to kind of swap these high to low carb items. These are great ways to reduce the excess carbs and calories. So if you want to, let's say, reduce carbs and maybe cut back on the pasta, but you still are looking for that pasta texture, you can do things like spiralized zucchini, squash, sweet potatoes, spaghetti squash. A lot of places now sell these tofu or fiber noodles. Be very careful of the bean and lentil pastas, as although they are promoted as having more protein and more fiber, they often have still a lot of carbohydrates. So they're not necessarily low carb versions. If you're craving something like rice, doing things like just rice cauliflower. It's fresh, but they also come in frozen now. You can literally just punch the holes in here, put in the microwave, and I steam it. And then I'll add, let's say, a little bit of guacamole to it or hummus. I'll add some salmon and just kind of mix it together. Really, really easy option. So the frozen is just as good as the fresh, as long as you're avoiding the ones that have like the cheese sauce and a lot of the seasoning already on it. Again, you can add that yourself afterwards. And then instead of, let's say, a tortilla or a wrap, a lot of people think that just because a tortilla or wrap is flat, that it has less carbs. But a lot of these wraps actually are pretty darn calorie and carb dense. So using things like a romaine or iceberg lettuce as your wrap, small pita, they have these little seaweed snacks that you can wrap things in, or they have these egg wraps that are typically in the deli aisle at most grocery stores. Are all really good options to, again, if you're craving like a fajita or a wrap, but minimizing the extra calories and carbs. Here are just some pictures of some of these high to low carb substitutions. So it's the zucchini squash and the zucchini, riced cauliflower, spaghetti squash, again, fresh or frozen, it doesn't matter, just avoid the ones with added seasoning and sauces. And then lastly, I think I showed this last time as well on my website, pearlmanmds.com. There's a ton of information when it comes to nutrition, and there's a printable PDF that you can print out that it categorizes everything, whether it's animal-based protein options, plant-based protein options, low carb options, high carb options. It's a great list that you can kind of go through when you're trying to navigate the grocery store. It's color coded, so the ones in blue can cause bloating, the ones in red can cause heartburn. So it's a really cool resource when you're navigating the grocery shopping. Okay, so some last points here to wrap things up. In general, whether you're trying to lose weight, maintain your weight, be healthier, reduce your risk of high blood pressure and stroke and heart disease and diabetes, in general, it's actually fairly simple. We want to reduce calories, reduce the salt, and reduce the added sugars. So the best modes of food preparation in order to accomplish those things are to get it raw, steamed, or air fried, versus sauteed or stir fries, or roasted. They tend to have a lot of sodium and a lot of added calories. Try to limit the pre-made foods like rotisserie chicken and deli meats. They have added fat and sodium and sugar to improve the palatability and to preserve it. And there's actually more and more data showing that a lot of these processed meats are linked to certain cancers. Ask for sauces and marinades and seasonings on the side. That way you're in much more control over those calories and sodium. So I really want to encourage you all. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I want to encourage you all that no one's going to do this for you. If you want to feel well, you need to eat well. That's really the bottom line. We need to get back to the basics here. You need to prep for success. I encourage you all to kind of go through your pantries and refrigerators this week and just dump the junk. So if you want to learn more, I have a lot of information on my social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and a lot of resources for you all to check out on my website. Again, it's pearlmanmds.com. And thank you to my friends and family for providing a ton of recipes and meal prep images. So I'm going to leave it at that, and then now it's going to be time to go over the questions.
Thanks, Dr. Pearlman. That was incredibly informative. We do have quite a few questions, so I know we probably won't be able to get to all of them, but someone did have a question about unsweetened almond milk versus coconut milk versus soy versus oat. Which is the best and which would you recommend?
Yeah, so it totally depends on, a lot of it comes down to taste preference. They have little nuances in the taste. It also depends on if you're trying to choose a lower carb option. The lower carbohydrate options are going to be your almond, your cashew, or your coconut. If you want a higher carb option, that's going to be like your soy, your hemp, or your oat. So a lot of it comes down to the amount of carbs you want and taste preference. But in general, you want to get the unsweetened, unflavored. And then beyond that, it's really going to depend on the taste preference.
Sorry, I was muted there. We've also gotten quite a few questions about meal prep recipes. So can they head to your website for some of those
Yeah,
recipes?
so there's a lot of information on the website. Yeah, in general, when you're meal prepping, again, it's pretty simple. Most of it should be vegetables, a little bit of protein. The serving of a protein is about 4 ounces, but it's going to vary based on what you're eating. And then a lot of it just comes down to what your preferences are. If you don't like cauliflower, I would not tell you to eat cauliflower. The little things like buying, I showed you the rice cauliflower here, but this is just the florets of broccoli and cauliflower. So again, I'll punch holes in here, put it in the microwave, heat it for 4 minutes, and then I'll have it with salmon. And it literally takes me, less than 10 minutes to make that. So very easy options, but a lot more information on the website for sure.
We had a question about fasting. Is fasting a healthy way to lose weight?
So in general, I don't think there's necessarily anything magical about fasting. I think in general, I know I was told that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, and you have to start out with a good breakfast, and that in order to maintain your metabolism, you need to eat every 2 to 3 hours. And really, there's no data to actually suggest any of that. So breakfast is breaking the fast, whether that's 7 a.m. or noon, it is breaking the fast, and that's going to determine on the person's preference. So in general, if someone is not hungry in the morning, I'm not going to tell them to eat a huge omelet with toast and avocado in the morning. I want them just to eat when they're hungry. The caveat to that is, let's say you're working all day and you don't have a chance to eat until 6 p.m., you're starving, and then you consume 2,000 calories because you're as hungry as a horse. So that I wouldn't recommend. In that case, I would say, okay, if you don't have any time to eat during the day, and we want to really prevent that binge at 6 p.m. So maybe eating something right before work will help reduce your hunger so that you don't overeat at 6 p.m. So it really depends on the person. In general, though, we shouldn't be, waking up in the middle of the night and eating. That's not normal. We shouldn't be going on a cruise and going to the midnight buffet and thinking that's normal eating behavior. So in general, we shouldn't be eating a huge meal right before bed. We shouldn't be eating within 3 hours of going to bed in order to reduce the risk of, aspiration while sleeping and heartburn. And so if you go to bed at 10, then I would definitely have dinner before 7 p.m. And then let's say you're not hungry until 11 a.m., then maybe your breakfast is 11 a.m. So maybe that's your fasting scheme. But if you're starving at 7 a.m., I'm not going to tell someone they need to just work through it and starve until 11 a.m. It really just depends on when people are hungry.
Okay, and maybe do one more question. Excited for the website. Any affordable, quick, healthy cookbooks you recommend?
I don't know if cookbooks are really even a big thing anymore. There's so much information online. There's a lot of apps out there with recipe finders. That's probably what I would suggest is downloading a free recipe app. And that way it's much easier to use a filter. If let's say you want to do, gluten-free, low carb, under 30 minutes, it's much easier to use filters to find recipes that way than it is to, search for a particular cookbook based on all those food preferences. So I would say definitely just start with either the Google or the Apple store to see what sort of free apps are out there to help you kind of narrow down those searches.
Okay, and with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you everyone for attending. Once again, you will receive a recording, a link to the recording in our follow-up email. I did include Dr. Pearlman's website in the chat box, so please check that out. And yeah, thank you so much for attending. Dr. Pearlman, any last words?
Someone mentioned a question about dried fruit. So I don't recommend dried fruit. Always have the fresh because the dried fruit has a ton of sugar. And then lastly, someone asked a question about fermented veggies and whatnot. I tend to not recommend fermented foods because a lot of my patients have gas and bloating, and that can definitely make those worse. That's it.
Okay. All right.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yep. See you later. Bye.